Is this the best Jack the Ripper suspect, Charles Allen Lechmere? Numerous unresolved cases have captivated true crime fans for decades. Among these are the Black Dahlia case, the murder of John Benet Ramsey, and the Villisca axe killings, to mention a few. The identity of Jack the Ripper, the serial killer who haunted the streets of London in the late 1800s, is one of the oldest unresolved and most perplexing mysteries. Jack the Ripper killed women in Whitechapel, a poor part of London where a large number of immigrants lived. The region was plagued by disease, crimes were common, and violence was a daily occurrence. It is thought that the first murder committed by Jack the Ripper occurred on August 31st, 1888. A 42-year-old woman was discovered with her throat slit and her abdomen horribly mutilated. In the weeks that followed, more women were slain, but since Jack the Ripper's identity is unknown, it is uncertain how many people he really murdered. According to the majority of historians, he was responsible for at least 5 of the alleged killings, often known as the canonical 5. They were Mary Jane Kelly, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, and Catherine Eddowes. Over the last 134 years, no murder case has captivated the annals of crime quite like that of Jack the Ripper. Despite the fact that hundreds of suspects have been proposed, it seems that the murderer must have been an inconspicuous individual who lived anonymously among the public and had cause to be on the streets in the early hours of the night. One individual has been buried among the evidence for the last 120 years, never considered a suspect but was identified at the scene of a recently murdered victim, a man who, upon reflection, looks to have been caught red-handed. Mary Ann Nichols was believed to be the second victim of Jack the Ripper. She was murdered on Bucks Row, a lengthy roadway from which there was no quick escape. On the night of the murder, a police officer walked past the crime scene 15 minutes before she was murdered and saw nothing suspicious. Police officers regularly passed both ends of the street in half-an-hour intervals as their designated beats. The coroner was shocked during the hearing that the killer had not been apprehended due to the police presence in the area. A day into the investigation, an explosive interview with a man named Robert Paul published in a newspaper revealed that the police had not in fact found the corpse first, as was reported. In fact, when Paul approached the crime scene, there was another man standing looking at the recently slain woman. This man was Charles Allen Lechmere. Charles Lechmere was born in Strand, London, England, on 5th of October 1849, the son of John Allen Lechmere and Maria Louisa Rolson. Lechmere was raised in a troubled environment, never knowing his biological father despite having 2 stepfathers. Lechmere's upbringing was likewise marked by housing instability, since he was raised in a succession of households. In 1870, Lechmere wed Elizabeth Bostock and had 11 children, 2 of whom died at an early age. In Lechmere's evidence at the Nichols inquest, when he identified himself as Charles Allen Cross, he said that he found the corpse of Mary Ann Polly Nichols near a gateway while going to work on Bucks Row. Robert Paul, who was strolling some distance behind Lechmere, first saw him standing where the lady was, and upon seeing Paul, Lechmere pulled him over to examine the woman. No blood was mentioned by either man, but by the time a police officer examined Nichols, blood had pooled around her neck, indicating that the slash to her throat was quite recent, while Lechmere and Paul were there. Neither man recalled seeing or hearing anybody else in Bucks Row, which has no side exits where a suspect could make an escape. The whole incident was forgotten until 2005, when amateur researchers revealed that Cross had supplied a bogus name, and that the mystery man's real name was Charles Allen Lechmere. A Swedish journalist, Christer Holmgren, dug into the topic, and his suspicions were aroused. Why did Lechmere lie to investigators? Investigations discovered that this was by no means the only untruth he made. Paul had proposed to a hesitant Lechmere that they locate a police officer while standing over the woman's body. In an adjacent street, they met Constable Misen. Lechmere informed the officer that a fellow officer had discovered a woman and was requesting assistance. It is believed that Lechmere, if he was indeed the killer, killed Nichols and began mutilating her corpse when he heard the sound of Paul's approach. He then quickly pulled down her garments to conceal her injuries and posed as the body's discoverer. So, what is the evidence against Lechmere? So, if Lechmere is a credible candidate for the title of Jack the Ripper, what proof might cement his guilt? Unfortunately, very little. He provided the police with the incorrect name. The fact that he provided the police with a phony identity is one of the primary reasons why he is suspected to be Jack the Ripper. According to writers and scholars Krista Holmgren and Edward Stowe, his real name was Charles Lechmere, not Charles Allen Cross, as he told the police and the coroner. According to the hypothesis, he would have only supplied a fake identity if he had something to conceal, namely that he was about to go on a reign of terror that would see him desecrate the corpses of 5 local women as he traveled from his place of living to his place of employment. However, if his motivation was to keep the police off his trail, the fact that he appears to have given the police his correct address and place of employment, as well as testified at the inquest into the death of Mary Nichols, indicates that he was either a cool and ruthless operator, or that he gave the false name for some other reason, one that can only be speculated upon, given that it does not appear to have been noticed or commented upon at the time. He was a local. The Crossists, who are theorists that believe that Cross, the fake identity given to police by Lechmere, also argue that he was a local resident, which many experts think Jack the Ripper very probably was. In actuality, he resided just a few blocks east of Bucks Row, at 22 Doveton Street in Bethnal Green, and he worked as a carman or cart driver for Pickford's in Broad Street, about 30 minutes west of Bucks Row. Lechmere's residence, family, and place of employment position him in close proximity to a number of Ripper murders and extra-canonical crimes. Holmgren argues that geographic profiling, which was developed decades after the Jack the Ripper killings, might assist in identifying probable suspects by comparing their documented travels and regular locations to crime sites. Criminals often commit crimes in regions that are not too near to their homes, but are nonetheless somewhat familiar. Holmgren contends, based on these facts, that Lechmere is the most credible candidate for the Ripper killings. Lechmere's shortest logical routes to work, one travelling through Hanbury Street and the other down Old Montague Street, would have him pass surrounding streets at the same time as the murders of Martha Tabram, Polly Nichols, and maybe Annie Chapman. The so-called double event involving the killings of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes on the same night occurred farther south and in the early hours of a Sunday, the only day Lechmere would not have been travelling to work. Stride was slain close to Lechmere's mother's home and in the neighbourhood where he grew up. Lechmere would have been familiar with the location where Eddowes was murdered, since it was on the path to Broad Street from at least one of his previous residences. Mary Jane Kelly was slain on the northernmost route to his workplace, and her estimated time of death is consistent with his expected commute, despite the fact that she was murdered on a holiday and he may have been off work. With the age of this case, there will always be theories on the identity of Jack the Ripper. On a poll taken on jacktheripper.org, Lechmere only came in third most likely to be the infamous serial killer. Was Charles Cross Lechmere really Jack the Ripper? As with so many other suspects, the honest conclusion must be that he may have been. The evidence against Cross Lechmere is, to say the least, circumstantial, consisting mostly of the facts that the bulk of the killings occurred on his way to work, and that he was discovered at the location of one of the murders soon after it occurred. Although the fact that he appears to have given a fake identity raises suspicion against him, and it would be interesting to know why this wasn't picked up at the time, he may have had another reason for this deception than to conceal the fact that he was a ruthless serial killer who murdered women on his way to work.